FORA.tv. The world is thinking.
If you were a terrorist, and in this book I put myself into that position, okay, let's go to ground, out in the world. I wandered through much of the globe looking at this, rough parts of the world. And if you were a terrorist and wanted to hit New York or Washington or London, some similar place, probably not right here, you would not logically count on being able to get hold of an assembled device. You would have to make it yourself. Now, countries, when they want to go nuclear, have to manufacture the fissile material because it doesn't do them any good to have one or two bombs. They need to have an entire arsenal and be able to sustain it provably. This is political muscle. What matters is the industrial plant more than the weapons itself, which is, we can see the pressure in Iran today to prove that point. But so they can't get hold of enough fissile material in the black market for more than one or two bombs, and it doesn't do them much good. A terrorist group is totally different. They cannot expect to get an assembled device, and they cannot expect to manufacture enriched uranium, weapons grade, greater than 90%. They cannot expect to be able to handle plutonium, which is a very difficult material to handle. They have to get hold of it somewhere already manufactured, and the place they would turn to still today probably is Russia. This book deals a lot with that problem. It's a long-standing problem. We know that it was probably most severe. That is the problem of the insecurity of Russian stockpiles of fissile material, weapons grade greater than 90%. That danger was greatest probably right after the fall of the Soviet Union, 91, 92, 93, in that area. The Americans realized it and went in with a massive program to provide better locks and doors. It has been quite successful. The Russians themselves have gone a long way, as you know, toward authoritarianism. Under Putin, they themselves not only are valuing this product, weapons-grade HEU, more than they did before. They're increasingly nationalistic, but they also have increasingly given power to the FSB, the descendants of the KGB, secret police. In other words, they are controlling not only their nuclear arsenals, their nuclear stockpiles more tightly than before, naturally, even without American aid, but they're also controlling the roads and the cities much more tightly than before. The Russian stockpiles sit primarily in the 10 former secret cities east of the Urals, now the closed cities, still very closed and guarded cities. I went there to that area to look at it, and let me tell you something that it was known very much when I arrived. The FSB, local FSB, was extremely aware of what I was doing. They were monitoring, not to be paranoid about this, but over the years I know when people are monitoring me, when they're not. And I certainly was being watched and to some extent followed around and questioned. A terrorist going in there is not just going to walk in the door and go out and sort of execute a commando raid, which is what some people in Washington promote as a nightmare scenario. They might be able actually to employ Chechens or somebody to hit one of these cities and the stockpiles, but the stockpiles, those cities are guarded by Russian troops. Now those Russian troops, as has been widely said, are drunk half the time, and they're on drugs, and they're committing suicide, and we're talking about very, very low morale. It's the dregs of the Russian military system. That's getting pretty low, but they still know how to shoot weapons, at least enough to make noise. So if a group went in and tried to steal through force of arms 100 pounds, which would be the key thing, of nuclear material for a bomb, if they made any noise at all, if a single shot is fired, they're not going to be able to get away. If they could grab the stuff, they've got hundreds of miles of Russian roads to negotiate. And Russia is not a pushover country anymore. They will not be, and they would know this. They would know. If they don't know it, so much the better, but they're going to know this. What they can do, and the real weak point, is corruption. If they could get hold of 100 pounds of greater than 90% HEU and do it in such a way that the Russians don't know it for, let's say, at least 3 days, and preferably never, but let's say give them, say, 3 days, the Russians don't know it, gives them time to get that load out of the country. 2 bricks, 50 pounds each of greater than 90% HEU is enough to make a Hiroshima-style bomb. homemade in a garage somewhere in the world. You grab that stuff, if you do it through corruption, if you do it by payoffs, let's say you got $5 million to spend on this project, you might be able to do this. I think it's a very real concern. However, close analysis on the ground, rather than just scaremongering, says, yeah, it's a very real concern. It's a low probability, high consequence event if it ever happens, but it's still very difficult to do. Some Middle Easterner is not going to just walk into Ekaterinburg and start, paying people off to buy weapons, to buy fissile material. He'd have to work through Russian mafia. Every intermediary you work through allows for the possibility of betrayal. It would be very difficult to keep this secret, but it could be done. It could be done in Russia today, and there's nothing the U.S. can do about that. I mean, we're not going to reform Russian society, and when I was on the ground in the Eastern Urals, I saw plenty of evidence inside the secret cities, or the closed cities, of massive corruption there as well as elsewhere in Russia. So we know this is a very real problem.